in the week or extending those hours. So there are solutions. It just we need all parties to be open to hear that.
And are you involved in the charter? From what I've understood, you should be more involved in this charter from a legal standpoint.
Sir, only if you have one.
We would welcome all involvement, and early involvement is the key.
Thanks very much. Mr. Bachrach, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Jones, earlier you mentioned the stipend that is paid essentially to cover rent for these rural post offices, and you mentioned $13.57 per year. I can't imagine that's $13,057. I think what you were saying was that the average is $1,357. Could you clarify what that number meant?
Correct. That's so that would be for a Group 1 post office, and it's $1,357 per year. Now, in order to request an increase to that, they have to supply all the revenue and also the expenses for the course of it. What I had referred to earlier as well is the survey that we're doing. We've sent out approximately 300 surveys to group postmasters, and we don't have all the responses back, but the numbers right now are indicating that they're operating in a deficit of about $32,000 a month. And this is from those surveys that we've sent out. So our members are paying out of pocket in order for the post office to be maintained. So that's something that we are pushing with Canada Post, because nobody should have to pay to go to work.
Absolutely. It reminds me of school teachers having to buy school supplies for their students out of their own pocket. And I think everyone would agree that's something that's entirely unacceptable. Mr. Jones, one more question, and then I'm going to move a motion. We've been trying to get some information on the wages for these rural postmasters, and I understand you're in collective bargaining right now, but looking at previous years, say a year or two ago, what has been the starting hourly wage for a Group 1 postmaster in a rural community?
So a Group 1 postmaster being paid at level 1 in January 1st of 2019 would have started at $17.04. The rates affect
$17.04.
$17.04. Somebody at in the same level in 2023, January 1st, would receive $18.44.
That's absolutely incredible. Thanks for providing those numbers, Mr. Jones. Mr. Chair, with that, I would like to move the motion that I put on notice, that the committee order the Department of Public Works and Government Services to produce a complete list of all. Actually, I'm going to start again because this is a motion arising, so I'm hoping I can kind of modify the words on the fly, and I'm sure, Mr. Chair, you will correct me if I'm wrong in that.
What you do, you won't table your motion you had on notice. You can maybe just read the new one. It has a slight change, I understand.
Okay, and I understand that other members have asked for another change as well, so I'm going to try my best to get through this in one go. That the committee order Canada Post or Public Services and Procurement Canada to produce a complete list of all 600 rural post offices that have been closed in Canada since the 1994 moratorium, including the location of the post offices, the dates they were closed, and the stated reason for closure, and that this list be provided no later than April 26th, 2024.
Thanks. It seems to be just adding the request for information for the reason of the closure from the one that you had originally.
There was one other small change there, Mr. Chair, and that was to indicate that it could be either Canada Post or PSPC that could provide the information. And the other tiny change was that I noted that we used the two names of the department interchangeably, the old name being Public Works and the new name being Public Services. And I thought it would be best to reflect the current name of the department. Thank you.
It'll always be Public Works to me, Mr. Bachrach.
I know.
I understand we generally have consensus, unless Mr. Sousa, did you wish to address that?
We have consensus to include both.
Perfect. Are we all clear on that? Perfect. I don't think we need a vote. So done. And you're out of time as well. So
thank you very much.
Finish
Mr.
up our
Chair,
last.
Thank you to our witnesses.
Thanks, Ms. Brackrack. We'll finish up our last two witnesses, Mr. Genuis, then Mr. Sousa.
Mr. Chair, I believe I'll be taking that
Go ahead,
round.
Mrs. Block.
Yeah. So I know that in the last meeting that we held with individuals from Canada Post and PSPC, we heard that despite the moratorium on closing rural post offices, over 600 post offices have been closed, and we've talked about that again here today. I'm wondering if, and we've heard that that's 600 over the last 30 years. So that would be about 20 post offices a year. Do you have a yearly breakdown of the post office closures? And can you tell us if that has actually accelerated in the last couple of decades?
I would be interested to hear the fallout from that motion that was just put forward. So to see those numbers, because the numbers that I'm looking at, our records indicate that between 94 and 2007, there was 63 post offices closed. And between 2007 to 2023, we have 321 post offices noted. So I would be interested to hear that list of the 600 that was put forward in that earlier motion.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you don't know where that number came from?
I would be very curious to see the list that Canada Post would produce to send that. I imagine that that's where it was coming from.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, it sounds like that number has accelerated, certainly in the past 17 years, to reach the number of 600. In your opening statement, Ms. Simpson, you outlined the critical role that post offices play in rural communities. And again, at the meeting where Canada Post presented, we heard from them that they have developed a long-term strategy and a transformation plan, which they believe is not dictated by their financial position, whether they're running a deficit or not. And I'm wondering if you can tell us if you are aware of this long-term strategy and transformational plan, and if either your association, Mr. Jones, or the union has been consulted on it or has provided any kind of input.
Through our collective agreements, we have consultation language, as well as we have what's called our Appendix T, which talks about expansion of services and financial services at Canada Post. As you heard my colleague Dwayne say very clearly, a lot of time consultation starts, after an idea has been done by Canada Post. So we need to have true consultation at the beginning of the process, because nobody knows the workflow and the work that we do better than postal workers and postmistresses and assistants as well. So for us, we feel the consultation process has to be true, transparent, and clear with the unions at the beginning, not when ideas have already been done and be voluntold what's going to happen, because we do have visions. Our Delivering Community Power campaign has allowed Canada Post to see how we see expansion of services happening and not to leave anybody behind, as well as to ensure Canada Post remains financially sustainable, because taxpayers' dollars do not pay for postal workers' salaries. But again, we are taxpayers within the communities.
Thank you. I know you're aware that Canada Post has been running significant deficits for a number of years. And again, they've stated that they are trying to refocus on their core business, and they have actually sold off 2 profitable companies as a step towards that. Is it at all concerning to either of you that Canada Post, which is actually struggling with deficits, sold off profitable companies which would have brought in revenue that may have helped subsidize their core business and the work your members do?
My members were not represented at those 2 companies. They're represented at Canada Post. For us, anytime that Canada Post makes a decision that is not seen to be financially the best is their decision. But we, again, as postal workers, want to expand services at Canada Post for the jobs which our members do. And that's why it's important for us to push and have the Delivering Community Power campaign. And your own polls of the government showed that the public wants an expansion of services at Canada Post, and even the public is also fully in support of expansion of services at Canada Post.
Am I done?
Thank you very much. Mr. Sousa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for appearing before us. In 2003, Canada Post agreed to recognize rural route contractors as employees represented by CUPW, known as Rural and Suburban Mail Carriers. And in 2005, CPAA signed a memorandum of agreement with CUPW that a bargaining unit made the rural and suburban mail carriers was appropriate. And CUPW agreed to respect the separate bargaining rights of CPAA. As you're well aware, there's no definition for rural in the rural moratorium. Can you please provide the respective definitions for rural and suburban mail carriers?
So they deliver in a rural area, not what is considered a urban area. So that's on the outskirts of many cities and that. So, for example, an urban area would be like a city like Toronto, Montreal, the major big cities, and rural areas are like the smaller communities on the outskirts of the big urban areas.
I know that CUPW first negotiated protections for the urban public network in 1992 because the conservative plans in the late 80s to privatize the entire retail network and introduce more private postal outlets. There was concern, so can you highlight any similarities between the urban collective agreement and the rural moratorium?
Can you repeat your question, please? Sorry.
So what similarities exist between the collective agreements then between urban and rural?
Okay.
And moratorium. And can you elaborate then on why there's no rural network protections negotiated at that same time?
So for us, we feel they do the exact same work. So we're in bargaining right now, trying to get one collective agreement because we feel that both bargaining units do the exact same work. So for us, the difference is that Canada Post is, even though RSMCs are employees, they're still making these members provide their own vehicles, pay for their own gas, which we were able to eliminate in the urban collective agreement years ago. We want that eliminated in this round of bargaining as well for the RSMCs because there's no need for them to be providing their own vehicles, paying for their own gas, providing their own relief workers. Many couldn't even go to their families' funerals or events because they had to provide their own relief people. So for us, if you're an employee of a company, all the tools for you to do your job should be provided by the company.
So I'm getting to this next question as a result of these two, and that's considering Canada Post's current financial situation, right? What do you feel are the key priorities to ensure that Canada Post is financially stable and provides quality service to all Canadians, regardless then of their postal code?
The last word you said, please?
So you've got this disparity, you've got these regional differences, you've got this tremendous amount of pressure on Canada Post to get through these financial concerns. And we want and need to have national distribution, but we got conflicting matters, right? We've got another world out there at our heels. So what do we do to provide that quality service? Like, what's your recommendations given these circumstances? Dwayne.
So one thing I would recommend, and Canada Post is looking at, so if you look at Manitou Island and Fort Capel, Saskatchewan, they've looked at enhancing the services through these, what they're calling a hub, in order to what would facilitate in that community to help drive extra revenue into that local post office and community. So to me, that would be one thing that I would highly recommend, is that they look at each community individually when they're looking at the overall approach. You can have similarities, but not necessarily the cookie cutout approach is going to work with every community. So they have to be flexible enough to pivot to be able to adapt that to each.
Ms. Simpson?
Yeah, so for us as postal workers, we've done a lot of work with the communities to know what they need as well. And you've done a poll through the federal government saying that they do want expansion of services in many communities. For us, like Dwayne said, each community is unique of its own people, but postal workers actually work in the community and are part of the community. So we know from talking to our customers what they need. And for us, the expansion of services is a great opportunity for Canada Post to secure revenue, especially with postal banking. Canada Post, we've changed what we deliver mostly from letter mail to parcel mail. That delivery method is a lot different now, as well as many people shop online, and we have the ability to deliver these parcels right to the door of all these people and to ensure that people have access to good services and good unionized jobs as postal workers in all the community lives. We know in Member 2, We were able to hire also an Elsie Pucktug on an on-reserve site. We were able to hire Indigenous workers to deliver the mail. And it was with great pride when I received an email telling me that the community was so proud to have an Indigenous person delivering the mail to their front door for the first time. So for us, we have to look at the communities because we all want to see ourselves when we're in a community and with our community hubs through delivering community power. This is one of the proudest moments for me of being a postal worker.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Witnesses, thank you for joining us today. Colleagues, we're going to suspend for about 5 minutes. Ms. Atwin and Mr. Backrack, you'll have to log out and log back in with your new Zoom, and then we'll be in camera for hopefully about 5 minutes. We are suspended.